Islam and Muslims. Stay tuned to Salaam Radio 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. You're listening to Let's Talk, your weekly current affairs show with me, Hamid Chowdhury, and my co-host, Akil Halil.
Assalamu alaikum.
It's brought to you by Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and Inspire FM in Luton. We're also online at salamradio.co.uk. You can find us on social media at Salaam Radio and YouTube Live or via iOS and Android apps. We're always on air 24/7, uniting all communities. Please get involved with your opinions by calling us on 01703 602 133 or text and WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978. Tonight we'll be talking about, in the face of global challenges and unprecedented conflict in the world, is the UN General Assembly an institution of audacious rhetoric or talking shop of lofty declarations and ideals? Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. How you doing?
How are you? Alhamdulillah, not too bad. Yourself?
I'm good. I'm just happy it's Friday. Really, it's been one of those weeks.
Always happy it's Friday.
It's not because I'm going to see you.
Yeah, no, that's what it is.
It's,
really.
it's the end of the working week.
Yeah, is that what it is? Well, we talked about this before, haven't we? It's not really work.
What?
You're
wow.
sitting in
Are
the
we
car.
doing this again? Are we really doing this again?
I just want. You keep bringing it up.
I'm just saying it's been a busy working week, and it's okay. Let's go with you. It's been a busy working week, and it's nice to see you.
Okay, Jazakallah. Alhamdulillah, it's nice to see you too, bro. Okay, so the UN General Assembly is taking place today.
Well, it's not just today. I think it's been during the week.
Well, during the week, yeah, of course, yeah. But before we go on to the topic, I just want to pick up on something that I heard at the Jummah khutbah today, and it was a great khutbah I went to today, and the Imam was talking about the celebrity sheikhs, yeah, or if that's the right term, I don't know, but more importantly about the way people are treating the sheikh today,
yeah,
or no sheikh, but people who are learned today. Right. And the way that we hear somebody, we get impressed by that person, and there are a lot of people who are really impressive out there. The message is good, the way they relate is good, they connect to your heart, and it's good. It's great to kind of get that feel, which then has an effect on you for a positive effect for change.
Yeah.
Right. But the problem and the thing he was talking about was that the problem today, and maybe it's happened in history as well, but today in particular, because we're witnessing it, is that the people put them up to such a pedestal that they forget that these people are human beings as well.
Yeah. It's the inherent nature of social media.
Yeah.
Millennials.
Yeah.
And the fact that
today is the social media.
Yeah, but again, this the other element here as well is, throughout history, certainly when we've been growing up, well, actually, maybe a few more decades for you, but yeah. Anyway, as we've been growing up, a lot of the shuyukh and, all these learned people only spoke in Urdu. Okay. So people didn't really understand what they were, what the person was preaching or whatever it may be. But now they do. Someone speaking in English, they relate it to them in layman's terms. People can relate to it in religious terms now, and like you said, people connect with these people.
Yeah.
Because they come across like your normal everyday type of person.
Right, yeah.
They can relate to you or things that you're going throughout life, and then because you can almost, although they may be in another country. And because of social media, you can contact them. They'll converse with you, etc. And I think people build a bond.
Yeah, yeah. But about that, I mean, at the time when people were speaking Urdu, they were talking to a community of people who spoke Urdu. But you're right. There was a period when the overlap happened, when the young people kind of became teenagers, and really the overlap. So that happened quite rapidly. But there wasn't enough move from the massages maybe to kind of fill that gap. So
That's
that
right.
was the period. So you're right in that sense. And today you see a lot of young people
Yeah.
who are, very conversant in Arabic. They can recite Quran and give you a tafsir of it and tell you word by word commentary and meaning and be able to pick a hadith off the cup of their hand. It's very impressive.
It is.
For people to see that, and then that unfortunately translates itself into kind of almost a celebrity type culture, and we see this around the world where
We do.
people who are really, really impressive, and then unfortunately they at some point, they're human beings at the end, and they and all human beings are prone to error.
Yes.
and mistakes, and we've seen this in time in history. But when they do that, then we think that the world is shattered, and we go to extremes. Either we're extreme supporting them, or we're the other extreme in hating them.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, can't see it changing anytime soon, because we're talking about religious
Humans are
people
human.
here. Humans are human, obviously. And I know we're talking about religious people here at the moment, but it's exactly the same as if it was a sports person. They might you're following a footballer or, I don't know, a boxer, and then they get involved in something they shouldn't.
Right.
People, like you said, have them on a pedestal, of a moral pedestal. So they start to judge them about how they would like to be perceived themselves. Or how can that person do that? I can't believe that person did X, Y, and Z. I can't believe this person was, driving a car when they were incoherent, or whatever it may be. And we apply the same set of rules now to religious people as well. And I'm not shocked, because obviously we live in the same society and we've seen this happening. I think it's incumbent on us, though, however, to not be the type of people which we've experienced now, who get involved in the conversation without having all the facts.
Yeah.
And I just think we then become part of the Chinese whisper.
That's right.
And
The
something
rumor mill.
exactly. And the problem you have there is what potentially may be completely untrue. We have now spent hours and hours just talking about something, and it's just it's speculation and all.
Right. In a lot of cases, it tends to be a complete speculation, because we don't have all the facts. And even if we did have all the facts, and even if some sheikh did drop him, or some sheikh did drop themselves, and made a mistake and all that. At the end of the day, if they turn to God and ask for forgiveness, who are we not to forgive us?
Exactly. And like we were saying off air, the problem we have in society at the moment is we won't forgive human to human. We won't forgive each other for something.
Yeah.
It can be the tiniest thing, and then on principle, like I was saying, some people will say to you, I'll meet you there on the day of judgment, and then we'll talk about it then. And it's really outrageous responses.
On the flip side, I guess, if you're a public figure, are you not expected to be held at higher moral standing?
When you're a public figure, unfortunately, part of the role is you're going to get scrutinized from every angle. And you see that. Look at, all right, let's take the Mayor of London, for example.
Okay, Sadiq
Khan, right?
Right.
This chap was a Labour councillor, didn't get half as much flack as he does now as being the Mayor of London, and typically, and actually moreover, being a Muslim mayor. And the example of this is Trump. When he was tweeting, when the attacks happened in Westminster, he singled out Sadiq Khan more than once. And it's just like, hold on a second, would this have happened if it was Ken Livingstone?
No,
would this have happened if it was Boris Johnson? So suddenly, everything that goes wrong in society and in London is all Sadiq Khan's fault.
It's an interesting example of Sadiq Khan, because he's a mayor for Londoners.
Yes, that's right.
He's not a mayor for Muslims.
Yes, correct.
So when he goes to a gay parade, for example, I don't know, and then there's an uproar in social media. How dare he, being a Muslim? He's Muslim. He has his personal beliefs, and he has his personal relationship with God, and so on and so forth. But the job he's in is representing all of London.
That's right.
So he'll go to the Sikh temple and the Hindu temple and the gay parade and the Muslim masjid and the wherever else, the church, synagogue, whatever. And he will, because they are his constituents.
Yeah.
He is the mayor for all of London.
That's right.
And actually that's an interesting point you made there. Because I think, unfortunately, as Muslims, we have a tendency to think, you've got to that place now, so now start to implement the Sharia.
Which I'm afraid it's not something you can do. You know, we live in the UK.
Well, it probably is because Sharia is common sense, right? So
Well,
it
yeah,
probably
that's
is
true.
implementing the Sharia in that
Well,
sense.
there's a lot of, and that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people who haven't actually taken the time out to learn about Sharia,
Yeah.
they don't actually realise that. So they,
No.
you know, the narrative which is being continuously peddled across all kinds of formats around the world is that it's something which is held by people with black flags, and they
Yeah.
want to bring in and they want to do all these things. It's completely the opposite. But then that would be another show, another
I mean,
time.
there was a study done a while back now. I'm going to try and get the reference for that, where they looked at the countries around the world and which one is closest to kind of Sharia compliant, I suppose, or Islamic State, in the true sense of the word.
Yeah.
And they found the UK
Yeah.
was the closest in that sense because of its laws, the way it governs, the freedoms, the equality, the
Wow.
fairness, the
Didn't
justice.
expect you to say
and
that.
UK was the one. I mean, and then it followed by a whole set of series of non-Muslim countries, and the Muslim countries came way down there because they had this kind of which was fascinating actually to read.
And you know what? I'm glad you said that. Let's put this out to our listeners actually now. I'll just give out the studio number 01733 602 133. That is a very interesting fact Brother Hamid has just dropped on the show just there about the UK being Sharia compliant. You can text WhatsApp the studio on 07745 278 978.
We'd love to hear from them.
Definitely. I mean, again, before we go on, bro, I just want to give a shout out to the studio manager for giving us our warm beverage before the beginning of the show.
Jazakallah khair. So 72nd session of the UN General Assembly.
72nd. Wow.
Yeah. So,
I mean, do you know, where are we? So, I mean, this organization has been going a long time.
1946.
1946. So in April 25th, 1945 to June 26, 1945, US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt first suggested using the name United Nations to refer to wartime allies. That's where the original name came about.
Yeah.
When I was doing my research, I was like,
League of Nations.
yeah, where did this come from? And then obviously the term Churchill, who then cited Byron's use of the phrase United Nations, and then it just went forward, and from then on it was adopted. Later on, it looks like actually, another interesting stat for you here, brother, is this. That the idea for the future United Nations as an international organization emerged in declarations signed at the wartime Allied conferences in Moscow and Tehran in 1943.
Wow.
And when I started digging at the beginning of what the United Nations was about, I was shocked with that. Because where we are now in 2017,
okay,
so then from October 1944, representatives of France.
Shall we? We've got a call.
We've got a call.
Let's.
I'll let you do your thing, brother.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. You're live on air on Let's Talk. What is your name? If I can get this right, there we go.
There we go. Just start again.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, it's Shabina again.
Hey! It's our favourite listener.
No, I had to pick up the phone, seriously. Before my husband came back, I thought, no, I'm going to be the good wife. I had to pick up the phone when I heard you get hot beverages.
Oh, okay.
You kept that quiet.
Oh, man, the secret's out. Our fellow Salaam radio presenters are going to be kicking off now.
Absolutely, and I hope that you've got a line of calls tonight because I'm going to start off with this call. And I actually just wanted to say that, first of all, brilliant show, brothers. For me, it's a learning experience because listening to your shows, you told us about the history, Brother Akil, and I'm just going to say I don't know much about this in terms of the United Nations or its setup, but one thing that I am aware, if I may, in terms of giving my opinion, is that this is an organization that aims to de-escalate conflict the world over. And you may have recently seen the speech by Donald Trump in which he stated specifically, quote, that he was going to destroy North Korea. And no effort was made on any of the allied countries to apprehend that. Obviously, his comments were very unhelpful. And I just feel as an organization, there is questionability rises about how it's run and who it's essentially dictated by. So that's just one pure example. about how effective this organization is. And we've been talking about the plight of the Rohingya Muslims, and we've had meetings with the MP in the city. And one of the suggestions that was put forward was the proposition of sending in UN peace troops to actually see, without any take-up of arms, to see that the Rohingya Muslims are protected within their areas of habitat, or to see their safe evacuation and to see that they are safe from persecution by the Burmese military. And that would be one option. And I'm surprised that the common person would suggest that, and the United Nations yet hasn't come up with a strategic plan to try and tackle the issue, which says a lot, really.
It does, yeah. I mean, hopefully we're going to try and dissect the history of them and get to what you've just mentioned, which are really, really important points. I mean, it often and I'm sure Brother Hamid is exactly the same, you can't help but feel at some stage, as you watch the history and certainly the timeline of the United Nations, not only in our lives, but previously and certainly forthcoming, is what's the point?
Absolutely.
What's the point of this organisation? But hopefully we're going to try and get through that. You have raised some really, really important points there, though, sister.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And just if you can highlight it during the show, probably it's a point for topic of discussion. In the 70s, there's a very famous video clip in which Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who was the Prime Minister of Pakistan, actually tore up the United Nations agenda when there was a conflict between India and Pakistan because they were being bullied by the Indian government at the time, and he tore up those papers. So that's, something to highlight as well, and probably a valid point of discussion. But thank you for having me, and enjoy your hot beverage.
That's the real reason. That's like the only real reason. The station manager's going to get like an email now saying, look, what's going on?
Make sure you don't burn your tongues drinking it. Okay.
I know you're looking out for us.
We know who to come to if we get scolded.
Absolutely. No worries at all. Thank you very much for having me. Great show.
Thank you. Salaam.
I think very good point. What the point that the sister made is that UN is there as primary purpose for peace and security in the world. That's its primary role.
That's right,
and that's the reason why it was put together.
Yeah, October the 24th, 1945.
But if you heard Donald Trump at the UN General Assembly, you wouldn't think that was.
No, you wouldn't. And I mean, obviously, we're jumping quite far ahead in 2017. If I can just pull it back a little bit, 1947, November 29th, United Nations announces a partition plan for Palestine. That's really when, if you look at its history, obviously they were just ratifying it and bringing people in and all the rest of it in the first few years, a couple of years even. But really, its first resolution, meaningful teeth, full of teeth, was their future government of Palestine plan, which came about in November 29, 1947. And the Assembly resolution was 181. I mean, it's interesting. What's really gone on from there to where we are today.
Yeah.
The plan was approved by a vote of 33 to 13 with 10 abstentions. The United Nations Security Council. This is the other element as well of this. I know we're going to go through this as well, but how murky United Nations is, the Security Council is, then the G7, and then the G20.
Yeah. Well, the UN is made up of 6 components.
Yes.
Yeah. So the UN in a sense is an idea, but it's made up of 6 components. UN General Assembly is one of those components, which represents all of 193 members. So every member in the UN General Assembly has a vote. So one member, one vote, or one state, one vote. And then obviously it's got a component which is the secretary, which is the administrative part for the UN, I suppose. But that also looks after the peacekeeping operations. So that's one of the, as the system, that's one of its roles is to send peacekeepers out and make sure that there is peace and security in the world. And the Economic and Social Council is another component, which IMF, it's part of that, the International Monetary Fund, which a lot of people would argue is responsible for a lot of chaos in the world. WHO, the World Health Organization, and so on and so forth. Then you got the International Court of Justice, which again holds states to account.
That's the ICJ or is it the ICC?
ICJ, I believe. 15 judges. Each judge gets elected for 9 years. etc. So in the last, I mean, I'll come on to the one after, but the last one's UN Trusteeship Council, which is defunct now, really. But it was there for the colonial countries, that had sort of relationships with colonized countries, and that kind of managed that. But the one that's the most powerful in all of this is the UN Security Council. Correct. So the UN General Assembly, 193 members, one person, one vote. The Secretary, okay, that's just administrative. The Economic Social Council, 54 members. And the International Court of Justice, 15 judges. The UN Security Council, which is the most powerful, which is the one that makes the decisions. The UN General Assembly's resolutions are non-binding on states. Correct. Yeah. Yet the Security Council resolutions are binding.
Yeah. And the problem you got there is that there's a conflict of interest.
That's right. And there's 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council: Russia, China, United States, United Kingdom, and France. And 10 elected members, and these 10 elected members come out of the general.
It's like a revolving.
Yeah, that's why the General Assembly. But it's the 5 permanent members that have the veto. So in answer to the question that the sister made, that the primary role of the UN General Assembly, UN, is peace and security in the world. And the organization or the arm of the UN that's responsible for that is the UN Security Council, of which 5 members are permanent members, and every vote counts. So they have to get the 5, and they have a veto. So if there's a negative voting, if they exercise veto, then that resolution doesn't get passed. And these 5 members, along with the current 10 members, are the largest distributors of weapons in the world.
And that is a fact. It's an absolute fact. And what I'm going to do, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I'm hoping we have enough time to do this justice. Yeah. I don't even think we have, honestly. But you're absolutely right. If 193 members are talking about something's happening in the world, there's some sort of atrocity, and one of the security members, for example, let's just say the UK, has a vested interest in the country, i.e., it wants to sell it arms, it will just veto. Yeah. And then instantly, nothing will happen.
The UN General Assembly is one person, one vote. So when they put forward a resolution, put forward some sort of resolution or some sort of initiative, whatever, then the 2/3. Well, there's certain areas where they need 2/3 majority. Otherwise, it's just a majority. Yeah. And the resolution gets passed. But those resolutions, in many cases, come down to the UN Security Council.
That's right.
And they're non-binding.
Yep, that's right.
They're almost advisory in many cases. And it's the UN Security Council that then, in a sense, debates on certain resolutions that pertain to security and peace in the world, and then exercises its power to enforce, and it uses other UN instruments to enforce. So if you look at the way the UN is set up, although it's called the United Nations, i.e., having everyone in the world on a single platform, really it's 5 permanent members.
It is. I mean, the idea itself was great. I mean, come on, everybody goes, sits around a table, like right, everybody, and we can work on security and things like that. I mean, give an example of this. So we have, in 1988, the United Nations set up the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. That's a good example of people thinking about the future of the planet. Yeah. And then you have, in 1990, that the panel for climate change completed its first assessment report. I mean, 1990 just seems such a long time ago now, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does seem a while ago.
It does, yeah. But just to give you another idea, so then in August the 2nd, 1990, the UN Security Council passed Resolution 660 condemning the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. Just to, I'm not going to go through every single one, but just to give you an idea of what happened. That was on August the 2nd. And then November the 29th, the UN Security Council resolution authorized the use of force to expel Iraq from Kuwait. So what we have here is 2 examples of it getting involved in a war or an attempted annexation of Kuwait. Yeah. And then the other element would be climate change. Mm-hmm. So you can see where what it was trying to do, but we're in 2017 now. There's plenty of other examples.
Right from the outset, this the resolutions. If you look at the resolutions that countries have vetoed, it's quite clear what the purpose or what or maybe what the purpose or how it kind of was being used was very much to safeguard the interests of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. So for example, take the USSR, which initially exercised all its vetoes on almost everything.
Yeah.
And then you get to around 1956 or something like that, and then you get UK exercising its veto. But UK exercised a lot of its veto with regards to South Africa. Mm-hmm. And remember, there was the apartheid time, so it was supporting and it was safeguarding in Eurasia. Wahid Asia, and then you get with all the Middle East ones, it's the US.
Yes.
And it's interesting. I mean, I looked through the list of resolutions that have been vetoed, and all this stuff's on the internet, and it's very interesting to look down that list and see what was vetoed and who was the country that vetoed it. And US is far stripping. Russia now, or USSR in the old days, of the number of vetoes it's exercising.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I tell you what, we're going to go to a break in about 20 seconds.
Okay.
So we'll continue this discussion after a break.
We will do.
Okay, well, Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters, for listening. Inshallah, we're talking about the United Nations, the UN General Assembly, and we're going to go for a break now. So please do come back, and inshallah, we'll speak to you then. Assalamu alaikum.
You're listening to Salaam Radio, and it's now time for Isha Azan.
This Azan is sponsored by Sovereign Accountants. We offer support to help maximise your business potential and profits. Call us on 01733 567 111. Sovereign Accountants, where your success is our aim.
Allahu Akbar, Allah. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio, broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Let's Talk. Assalamu alaikum.
You're
Back
awesome.
your host Hamid Chad with Akil Halil.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so before we went on break, we were talking about the United Nations General Assembly with the challenges we have in the world today. Is it really fit for purpose?
No.
We were talking about the origins of the UN as a whole, I suppose, and UNGA as one of its components, which provides 193 members or states in the world a voice on a platform which is equal. Everyone one member, one vote. Well, actually, interestingly, the UN General Assembly is the only democratic aspect of the UN because it actually a smaller state has the same voting right as somebody like the United States or Russia. So it's one person, one vote. But then again, the resolutions aren't necessarily binding. So.
No, they're not. No, they're not. I mean,
nothing to enforce it.
It doesn't take a genius to do research and find some of the spectacular failures of the UN.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, you had the cholera, which was brought, in Haiti during the earthquake relief operation, the disastrously late response to the West African Ebola epidemic, the UN refugee agency's non-appearance during Europe's refugee crisis. All in the name, of international community. But I mean, it feels like it's neither got the will or the capacity to cope with what's actually happening around the world.
Although when they want to go to war, we went to Iraq, we went to Libya, we went to all these places in the world. We dragged our heels in Bosnia and Kosovo. But all the ones that we wanted to go to war with, I think the UN was up there with and it only took the United States and the UK to force its hand.
Yeah, I mean, here's the other element which I don't understand as well. With the invasion of Iraq, I don't understand. There was minutes on their websites. All this information was widely available, yet they still went with it. Can you remember the infamous Colin Powell speech when he stood there in the UN and he made that speech about how this was a threat and everyone bought it? I mean, that's probably one of the most famous speeches of the 90s.
I think I think this is where the United Nations is held hostage, quite honestly, and by proxy, the smaller states are held hostage because what the US was saying at the time is either you're with us or you're against us. Either we go for the second resolution or a resolution and you support it, or we'll just go it alone. So really, I mean, as far as and we see this with Trumpism, we see this with Trump. The rhetoric from the US has always been, and with Libya we had this from France as well. The rhetoric has always been, look, United Nations great idea. It pacifies other countries, keeps them at bay, keeps them in their position. But if we want to do something and it doesn't work in our interest, then we'll just disregard it. We don't necessarily need it. And this is the problem. I think this is the problem with this undemocratic institution called the Security Council, where the 5 permanent members have a veto. And effectively, I mean, this is what I was telling you while on the break, that the veto came about. So veto is the thing that gives those 5 members a kind of a position to disagree. And unless you get all 5 members voting on something, the resolution doesn't pass.
Yeah.
If they abstain, it's still fine, because we saw this for the first time ever in US's history in Obama's administration in 2016, due to the illegal settlements, which, you know, Israel has been the constant denominator in the conflicts in the Middle East. If you look at all the UN resolutions that have started right at the outset of the UN, and the resolutions that have followed through to this day, where it concerns Middle East, Israel is at the center of it. Israel is one, and Israel is emboldened by what? Because the US has always vetoed any resolution, except Obama. Obama abstained, so then the resolution passed.
Yeah, hold that thought.
And
just exactly what you're saying there. 1955 to 1992, there were 65 resolutions against Israel. I mean, they didn't break all of them, but they came very close. And like you just said there, all of them, or almost all of them, were directly addressing the Arab-Israeli conflict.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, Israel has been the most abuser of the UN resolutions, probably closely followed by India over its Kashmir. And interestingly, both are friends. Than any other country, it has constantly, and to this day, you know, it's built this wall, which all the International Court of Justice says it's illegal.
Yes.
Yeah. Because it's not on Israeli territory. It's on the Palestinian territory.
Yeah.
And it cuts up communities, cuts up neighborhoods, cuts up families.
Yes.
And they just completely disregard for the United Nations. So anyways, the point being that and what the US did at the time when the UN was being created, the charter was being created, is that they said, look, unless we have the veto, we're not going to sign up to this. And the famous speech in the UN General Assembly was, or as the UN was being put together, was that either you to other states that were part of it, 51 member states at the time, either you sign up to us 5 members, or at the time 4, but France came slightly later, having the vetoing power, or there is no UN. And they effectively held them hostage to say, you either go home out of this conference today and there's no UN, or you sign up giving us the veto power. And that has been instrumental in safeguarding not only the United States' interests, but also the USSR, Russia, France's interests, UK's interests, and China's interests. Because, you know, they would always, anything that was impacting them, they would veto it. You know, it's strange, isn't it? Because any other country you can collaborate.
It's strange yet logical.
It's illogical because you collaborate, to attack another country like Iraq. But if there's a resolution for, I don't know, the oppression of what Russia did, for example. Or there was a case recently with the M1H. The plane that got shot down by pro-Russian supporters.
Yeah, that's right.
And at the same time, the Israelis had massacred about 200 people. And both of these came to the UN Security Council. They easily passed the resolution against or for an investigation into the shooting down of the plane. And Russia supported, actually. But yet the other one, where there should have been a clear investigation into what happened, US vetoed because it was Israel.
You can't make this up.
You can't make this up. I mean, look at
to our listeners, honestly, if you're thinking, well, these guys, perhaps they are going in their own direction here, etc. It's out there. This is actually happening. Mm-hmm. I urge you guys to get involved in our conversation. I'm just going to shout the numbers again, brother. Studio telephone number is 01733602133. Or you can text WhatsApp us on 07745278978. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. It just seems, self-serving.
It is self-serving. They are the biggest contributors, sellers of arms in the world.
Yeah.
We're living in an age of unprecedented conflict around the world.
Yeah.
And yet we have people on the Security Council who are the most powerful body in the UN, who effectively are de facto UN leaders. It's colonial powers, really. They are the biggest sellers of arms to corrupt regimes like Saudi Arabia or other regimes where there are wars happening, conflicts happening, and it's promoted by, or at least enabled by these Security Council members.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And yeah, and you know what? Here's another ironic element to this. Okay, Saudi Arabia, as soon as you touched on them, commonly referred to as a theocratic absolute monarchy. Okay, mass executions of its dissidents, beheads drug dealers, etc., etc., etc. But the US government has previously welcomed Saudi Arabia's ascension to the head, and get ready for this, brothers and sisters and people listening around the world, as the head of the UN Human Rights Council panel.
Yeah.
And it's cited, it's because they were close allies.
Yeah.
It's not just ironic. It's just truly, it's jaw-dropping. What's actually happening here, and then at the same time,
you scrub my back, I'll scrub yours.
I'll scrub yours, and then you've got all these Western allies who are blocking independent investigations into war crimes that are happening in Yemen.
Yeah.
Yemen has been forgotten.
It's forgotten.
No one's talking about Yemen yet. It's still being bombed.
Except Trump, actually, in his UN General Assembly speech, where he talked about how Iran is fueling the conflict in Yemen, which I thought was quite ironic because, US is supplying billions of tens of billions of dollars worth of arms to Saudi Arabia, including UK, and they are the ones using these weapons in Yemen and killing and massacring people.
I agree with you.
So,
and I know I'm going to go back a little bit. I'm just going to stick with this again. The UN, in my opinion, was mortally wounded with that Colin Powell speech. He was the Secretary of State to the permanent member of the United Nations organization. He stood there in front of the Security Council and lied through his teeth about Iraq.
Yeah. And
then it was a betrayal on principle. They haven't recovered. My personal opinion from that moment. Yeah. It's just something I can't get out of my mind. And then then you got I guess what I'm saying here is it doesn't matter. All these nations who are part of the Security Council are party to regime change.
Yeah, they are party. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You had Saddam Hussein, you had Gaddafi. Okay, all right, fair enough. There was things happening in their countries, but these things aren't decided for the common person who looks at the news every single day. They don't realize.
We have international law. You can't go into irrespective. Mugabe's still there, but we don't have anyone going in and saying, "Look, how dare you?" So it was sovereignty. Sovereign nations are sovereign for a reason. There is this international law that says that you can't just invade a country.
Yeah.
Or have regime change or anything. This completely illegal in the international. And this is the reason why I say that there is, when it comes to self-serving interests, nobody cares about international law. Nobody cares about these long-standing principles. Yeah.
Is it because
they care about what they want?
What they want. And do you think is it because the age of outrage, astonishment, I don't know, his revolution is all but over. We're just so used to this.
So outraged with Trump becoming president.
So our eyes off the ball.
Yeah.
So we're not looking at what we should be looking at. It's almost as if it's a diversionary tactic until, and this is really important, until this week when he stood there in front of the world and he threatened to wipe out all of North Korea.
You know what? Quite honestly, they should. I don't know why the UN Security Council is there. Get rid of the UN Security Council and allow UN General Assembly, where every state has a vote. Allow them to vote on issues that are concerning the world. Why can't we have democracy in our most prized institution in the world? Yet we want democracy elsewhere. But yet when it comes to kind of discussing these issues, we don't want democracy. We want these people who haven't been elected. I mean, that's why we went for Brexit, didn't we? We said that the European Union is made up of unelected officials representing us. Well, the Security Council is made up of unelected countries and they can't be overthrown. They can't be kicked out. The 5 permanent members.
That's right.
Yeah. And then you have a rotation of 10 elected members. I mean, why can't we just have the resolutions being discussed in the UN General Assembly? People vote on it, even if you say you need 2/3 vote. Well, let's go with that because there's a lot of other areas that require 2/3 vote. And then whatever the outcome is, they should express it. I don't understand. I mean, the more I look into it, I don't know what the purpose of the UN Security Council is. Apart from facilitate salams around the world.
I was just going to say, if you were cynical, you would just think, well, maybe it's to do with money.
Yeah.
I mean, look
at Trump.
Yeah.
At this speech. He said,
hard to miss him.
Hard to miss. He said, on the one hand, On one breath, he said, we're going to wipe the country from the face of the earth or the planet.
Absolutely shocking comments from the leader of the free world.
In an institution that's supposed to promote peace and security around the world, he's talking about wiping countries off the face of the planet. And on the other hand, he's saying that we are going to spend $700 billion on our military. And it'll be the most equipped and the biggest military in the world.
Tremendous.
I mean, we should be working towards de-escalation.
We should be.
We're working towards. I mean, he's ramping up an arms race.
Yes, he is.
He's saying 700 billion. Russia's going to come along. Well, we better spend more than that.
Well, that's what's going to happen. That's all. People, China, for example. I mean, this is what's going to happen, and this is what always happens. And you, in so many ways, you can understand. I mean, I personally, I know we've discussed this previously on other shows as well. I don't think Kim Jong-un is a nutter. I think he's coherent. I think he's with it. I think he's intelligent. I think he's thinking about defending his own country. And did you see his speech yesterday when he said, look, well, you've given me more the reason.
And he's absolutely right, because at the end of the day, this guy, Donald Trump, he's been saying, madman, rocket man, all these kind of terms. And yet we haven't really heard much from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
That's the first time actually he's addressed the nation.
But the first time he said, look, okay, you give me more of a reason to say, well, actually, let's press on. Because, if you're, the only deterrent I have right now for you to attack me is these weapons.
That's right. And I mean, and I know we're talking about.
So you're not giving me a reason not to have them.
Exactly, and that's the problem we have. Yeah. And this will only be settled diplomatically. I mean, the last thing we want is anybody with access to nuclear weapons who can have, although countries do have the capability of wiping everybody off the face of the earth, nobody wants to live in a world like that.
The biggest threat we have in the world today is not Kim Jong-un.
No.
Is Donald Trump, because he goes around mouthing off, you're a bad man, you're on notice, you're axis of evil, we're going to wipe you off the face of this earth, we're going to bomb you, Iran, we're going to rip up that deal so you can go away. And,
I'm glad you touched Iran there. Yeah, I'm glad you brought Iran up just there. I think it's really, really important to talk about Iran, actually. Iran has complied with everything that it was asked to do.
Yeah.
It was agreed that not everybody, except 2 countries in the world, seem to be happy with what Iran is doing.
Yeah.
There should be no reason to tear up anything. In fact, you could argue that what they want North Korea to do, Iran is doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So why are we even going down the path where we're saying it's not working, we need to stop this, we need to do this? It's because, once again, you go back to the de facto positions of everybody and the veto. We're going back to the veto again here, which is, Israel's trying to prop the US to say, look, you need to do this, whatever it may be, and take action.
I mean,
that is the 2 examples of the nuclear situation in the world. Tehran is, and the Iranians are complying, and you could argue that the North Koreans aren't. But now you could say, well, they're backed up into a corner, and he's only doing what a natural person or sane person would think about. They kind of think, okay, hold on. If they're threatening to wipe us all out, what can we do?
Yeah.
We're not going to say we're going to blow them away, but we need to defend ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the rhetoric from
scary.
Who's being attacked, with rhetoric, has to match. Otherwise, they walk all over you. It's like a bully technique. If I was being cynical, I would think that, with Trump going around threatening everyone, he's actually trying to get a reaction from somebody, because he wants to be commander-in-chief. He wants to be able to go and push some buttons. Yeah. And right now, he's got a taste of death, because he fired that missile into Syria, and he thinks, oh, this is good. I can do it from it's like a Call of Duty. I can play it from my home. I mean, he doesn't care about, I don't think he cares about international law. Certainly doesn't care about anything else. America first, the whole notion of America first is we want to become a colonial power. We want to go and invade countries. We want to take all the resources, and we want them for free, and that's the whole. I mean, what he's saying. I mean, he said it in this speech quite clearly that I'm going to put America first, and every other country should be putting themselves first, rather than what the original premise was, that countries will come together and collectively we will resolve the issues.
I'm glad he said that, because I think there's a pro to this, and the pro being with America looking inverted and Trump saying, right, we're going to do this. over the presidency of Ban Ki-moon, which he was elected twice to 2 5-year terms, okay, he was very much non-existent.
No.
Okay, he wasn't one of these, you know, he didn't get involved in every single conflict. I mean, the organization itself, you know, didn't lend itself to be involved in everything. You know, you seldom saw them get involved in every single thing that was going around the world when it should have been.
Yeah.
Now we've got Antonio Guterres. He's a Portuguese guy. He's come in. He's taken control. What he needs to do now with this organization is he needs to bring it into 2017. If the US are going to step to one side and say we're going to look after ourselves, this is the chance for the United Nations to take the lead, get involved, show us what they should be doing.
Yeah.
You know, they should be, and like the sister who called in earlier and said, they should be starting with Rohingya. And to be fair to Guterres, he has, right? And I think it's really important to stress here as well. The leader, well, the de facto leader of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, was due to give a speech this week, but she pulled out.
Yeah.
Okay. Now he has said that.
Probably would have got less of an attendance than Theresa May did.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the chance for if the US wants to do what they need to do, that's fine. But the UN, it needs to change its you know, its operate you know, its whole situation, how it's perceived and what it wants to do in the world, because it's been failing. You know, we did the Iraq War, then we did nothing in Syria, then they watched the annexation of the Crimea, then all these things have happened.
All these things have been driven by a particular agenda.
Exactly.
Largely been driven by the United States. You know, who just went out there and said, well, we want blood. Let's attack Afghanistan, the poorest country in the world. Let's attack Iraq, who didn't have anything to do with the World Trade Center bombings, or the Twin Towers, sorry. You know, didn't have anything to do with that. You know, let's just go and attack somebody.
Yeah.
And Trump, unfortunately, you know, at least that's the vibe he's giving off. He's saying, look, I want to attack somebody. Who's going to bite? Come on. I mean, Iran going to bite? I mean, his language is, I mean, it's like a child. You know?
Yeah, it is, but it's very provocative.
It's very provocative.
And you are right. It's almost as if he's casting the net to see who's going to catch. And we are, unfortunately, you know, at that stage in the world, it's quite scary. Language on all sides, really. But I mean, these people are in control of nukes.
Which is the scary thing, you know, that the only country, we talked about this last week, the only country in the world who's ever used a nuclear weapon in a state of anger has been the United States.
It is.
And it is the holder of the largest arsenal of...
Exactly. I think it's also a few other things that have happened in history. I mean, I remember some of the important speeches. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, he did a great one that time when he was defending Iran. Like the sister mentioned, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, when he tore up that resolution that was put in front of him.
Again, I mean, just talking about that, 50 years or 60 or so years since the since Kashmir was was occupied by India, nothing's happened. Resolution after resolution after resolution. You know, there must be about 60 or 70 resolutions now. Telling India to get out Kashmir. So that, you know, there can be an independent group can go in and can monitor the situation and stuff. But India has refused to. It has never got out of Kashmir. It's the largest army in the world in that space that's occupying it. If you consider the kind of Srinagar or that area, Jammu Kashmir, which is it's not huge, massive land, and yet you have like hundreds of thousands of Indian military personnel there and using all sorts of horrendous methods to oppress the people.
You know, that just highlights what we've been discussing throughout the show. The UN, great idea, toothless enforcement, controlled by 5 permanent members for their own financial or power or whatever it may be, strategic gains in the world. And until we see, and we're not going to see, certainly in our lifetimes, I don't think anyway, the changes that the world needs. I mean, they sat around the table, they agreed we needed to do something about the climate. Trump comes along, rips at the Paris Climate Accord. He doesn't believe in it, yet his country was completely destroyed. Well, not all of it, but sectioned by Irma. Yet we still have a climate change denier. And now I know we've got a show potentially coming in the future. We're going to talk about this, but the world is going through major weather-linked catastrophes. there should be no denial about climate change.
I mean, the good thing I read out of all the stuff I was reading was that because we're talking about the UN General Assembly, that although the Security Council wields so much power, actually the UN General Assembly does have a clause that it can take action if the Security Council refuses to. So it can out of its own initiative take action.
Yeah,
and
but
I think
has that ever happened?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think so, because a lot of this stuff is, you know,
a lot of these countries are interlinked. There's trade. There's all these
that's
things.
all it is. That's all it is. It's about trade and economics rather than you know, human rights and you know, you know, holding people to account who've committed war crimes and ethnic cleansing, which is happening now with the Rohingya.
Absolutely, happened in Bosnia as well.
Yeah.
I think what needs to happen in the future is it needs to lose its 1945 mindset. It needs to get to it needs to be thinking about 2045.
Yeah.
That's what the UN needs to be thinking about, and
it's not going to do that if it's always being held hostage by 5 or so members. You know, I mean, all the 10 members today, 15 members are all Western countries. We don't get some countries which are remote in Middle
China,
East.
obviously.
Well, yeah, but powerful countries,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Developed countries.
Yeah.
Not the developing countries. You know. So, which goes to show they probably are buying up votes at the UN General Assembly. Because that's, I mean, this is how it works, doesn't it? In the sense that you've got your money, you go in there, you say, look, we'll give you X amount of aid if you know, vote with us. And that's how politics, unfortunately, is working today. Towards the end of the show, man.
You are joking. This
Seriously,
has flown by.
40 odd seconds to go.
Okay, well,
last few comments, I think.
Well, like I said, it needs to be thinking 2045.
Yeah.
It can't be thinking 1945 anymore, and there needs to be a change. That the Security Council should be abolished.
Yeah. I think the UN is a good idea. I think, but it needs. You're right. It needs to kind of be more broader, more democratic.
Yeah.
You know, be representative of the countries in the world, and not just be a little clique, little you know, a G5 club.
Yeah.
You know, because we've got quite a lot of those clubs, and they aren't doing anyway.
We do.
Okay, well, Jazakallah khair for listening, brothers and sisters. It's great having you on having you listen to us. And inshallah, I'll see you next week. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.